How's it going guys, Kris here and welcome to another Battlefield 5 weapon guide. Today we're going to be taking an in-depth look at the M3 Grease Gun, an American SMG for the medic class that came along in Chapter 5, War in the Pacific. So back in the early 1940s, the Americans recognised the importance of submachine guns for combat on the front lines. And despite already having the Tommy gun, it was a pretty expensive thing to mass produce and supply in vast numbers. Taking a bit of inspiration from the likes of the Sten gun, an SMG designed especially with cost and speed of production in mind, the US Army basically wanted something similar for their own troops. A fully automatic weapon comprising of sheet metal, which could be churned out and issued as simply as possible. That's pretty much where the M3 Grease Gun comes into the scene, being the cost-effective weapon to fill this void. Essentially looking a bit like a tin can with a muzzle stuck on the end of it, the M3 wasn't exactly a work of art, especially from an ergonomics point of view. But much like the Sten gun, it was very capable of killing, which at the end of the day was the main thing that mattered. The weapon was chambered for the 45 ACP cartridge, just like the good old Thompson, and it could hold up to 30 of these rounds in its detachable box magazine, giving it a decent amount of firepower for general use. But in comparison to other US weapons available throughout the war, quite a lot of soldiers weren't exactly very big fans of the grease guns, with many preferring the M1 carbine or the Thompson, which were generally perceived to be more reliable, deadlier, and more comfortable to carry around and use. Improvements were made to the M3 over its production life, leading to a slightly better, simplified variant, the M3A1, created in 1944, just near the end of the Second World War. But because it was introduced so late on, it completely missed World War II, but did go on to see action in other combat zones not long after, like the Korean War and Vietnam. Though despite being largely phased out from service in the 60s, the M3 and M3A1 were still given to some vehicle crews over the many years to follow, down to them having a manageable size and decent portability. Anyway, moving on to the stats next. As far as the damage goes, the Grease Gun's damage graph actually follows a fairly similar sort of drop-off pattern to a lot of the other SMGs, but it punches a little bit harder than average, having the maximum damage of 33.3 up to 10 meters, which then sharply declines from here, getting weaker and weaker the further your bullets travel through the air. It's naturally going to take more shots to kill depending on the distance of your target, and if your target happens to be beyond the range of 100 meters, you'll only be able to inflict 11.6 damage per bullet, which happens to be the M3's minimum damage output. Slightly more than normal, but still not exactly a massive amount, compared to other weapons in other classes. Generally speaking, these higher damage readings allowed the Grease Gun to kill in one less bullet than most of the other submachine guns, being able to drop other players in just 3 shots up close and up to 9 further away. So for example, at the same distance the MP40 would kill someone in 5 bullets, the M3 Grease Gun would be able to kill in just 4, giving the M3 more power, with each individual shot having a bigger impact. But this doesn't give the Grease Gun the advantage all the time, because as a nasty trade-off, it's got one of the slowest full auto fire rates in the game, shooting at the speed of just 450 RPM, a speed which can't be increased through Specializations either. The weapon can be extremely deadly in close quarters, where it's designed to be used for maximum effectiveness, as it can still take down people in similar sort of speeds to some of the faster firing guns in the class, like the MP28. But missing shots can significantly increase those kill times, which will be problematic over all ranges. So despite it dishing out more damage, there can be a lot more pressure on you to land shots successfully, with the M3 slinging its bullets out at a much slower pace than normal. So as we established in the last section, although accuracy can be an important factor for most weapons, it can be crucial for letting you take advantage of the Grease Gun's extra power in gunfights, with the M3 having that really lazy fire rate that can slow kill times down a hell of a lot if you miss too many shots. Unfortunately for the Grease Gun, it's not exactly got a very smooth and steady recoil pattern, having that heavy vertical kick reading of 0.548 and a vertical increase value of 0.038, both pretty high figures that can cause the gun to bounce around a little bit more per shot. The M3's also got some alternate values for its horizontal recoil, with a leftwards figure of 0.2, which isn't too bad, but a rightwards figure of 0.32, which is generally quite high, something that might reduce precision and possibly create a few problems. This recoil pattern will typically force your aim upwards and usually cause it to drift more so to the right as you fire away, though with these values generally being a bit beefier than average, this might cause a few shots to stray off target. especially if you're trying to take on someone outside of the gun's comfort zone, further away in the distance. So just like with the other SMGs, it might not be the most effective thing to use for taking on players over long sightlines. Thankfully, because the grease gun does fire quite slowly, its recoil can be more manageable, as it's not going to stack up quite as fast, and therefore it won't seem to be as erratic as it sounds. You'll be able to counter that violent kick a bit easier by tap and burst firing. Maybe bursting your shots in groups of about 2 or 3 if you're trying to take down a target over mid-range. And because the M3's got access to the recoil buffer specialization, you could always slap that on there if you're having trouble controlling the gun's upwards kick. Now, the M3 grease gun's got the ammo capacity of 30 rounds, which are housed within those straight detachable box magazines, slotted into the underside of the receiver. And in relation to a lot of the other SMGs in Battlefield 5, this is generally a decent amount to have, with quite a few of the others only having the capacity of 20 shots. Because the grease gun kills in less bullets, and fires at a slower, more manageable rate, this actually makes the M3 a very efficient weapon, one of the most efficient in the whole class, as you'll be capable of killing more enemies per magazine, improving its reliability in close quarters, in scenarios where you're surrounded and need to take care of a few people in quick succession. So if you flank an enemy squad, getting the drop on them from behind, you should have plenty of ammo to take them all on, without having to reload halfway through, like you probably would with one of the faster firing guns, which is great if you like to be a bit stealthy and run around behind enemy lines. With tactical reloads taking just slightly over 2 seconds, and full empty mag reloads taking 3 seconds, these times are also a little bit on the shorter side, complementing the grease gun's reliability even more within dangerous territory. They're not the fastest, and they can't be sped up with specializations, but most of the time they shouldn't really cause too many issues, providing you keep an eye on your ammo count in CQC. The combination of having sustainable magazines and decent reload speeds can often make the M3 a more dependable submachine gun to use in a lot of awkward situations. And if you're sneaking around near a hostile objective point, or happen to come across a bunch of enemy players with their backs turned, the grease gun will usually grant you with enough firepower to mow them all down, and keep you engaged with the action fine enough. So let's run over those specializations. First of all, you'll be able to find slings and swivels on the left at the top, and quick aim on the right. Because the grease gun is predominantly a close quarter combat weapon that fits in better with aggressive playstyles and flanking tactics, I find that slings and swivels is often better for when you're running around behind enemy lines, being able to react to other players you run into a tad quicker than normal. The quicker deploy time after sprinting will allow you to start firing sooner, and therefore give you a slight edge when you get caught off guard. Though quick aim is also going to be beneficial in gunfights, but it isn't really going to help you to recover any faster after running, so if you like to sneak around at a slower pace, then that might be the better choice instead. Further down the spectrum, on the left side are 2 options to improve hipfire accuracy, enhanced grips and the polished action, and on the right side you'll be able to find the custom and lightened stock options, increasing movement speed when aiming down sights and lowering the gun spread while you do so. I guess this choice is all down to how you prefer to play. With the M3 being most effective in CQC, I find the hipfire bonus to be a bit more beneficial, often allowing me to bypass aiming down sights altogether, helping to cut down those kill times. Plus it also goes really well with slings and swivels too, being able to shoot sooner after sprinting. With that said, if you've gone for the quick aim spec to start with, and you generally prefer to aim down sights whenever you can, then running down the right side of the tree will probably suit your style of play a little bit better, giving you those ADS advantages. Last of all, we've got a pretty unique specialization on the bottom left, the option to equip a suppressor, and on the right, the recoil buffer, lowering that vertical kick. With the grease gun's upwards kick being quite high, the recoil buffer makes perfect sense to make it more controllable. Though with the weapon firing slowly, and with that vertical recoil being quite easy to counter by tap firing, I'd naturally opt for the suppressor, which slightly reduces gunshot sounds in the environment, and actually hides the directional damage indicators when enemies get hit, making it harder for them to retaliate, thus making the gun even more effective for when you're playing stealthily around hostile objective points. So anyway, in conclusion, the M3 grease gun is a fairly unique weapon that does what a typical submachine gun is designed to do, but it does so in a way that's different to a lot of the others, as instead of shredding people up in close quarters with lots of weak bullets, the M3 does the complete opposite, giving you a similar sort of firepower by boosting the damage but lowering the fire rate. This means that every bullet is going to have a bigger impact, especially within those shorter sight lines, where the gun has the ability to kill in just 3 shots, even less if you hit the other guy in the head. And so that extra damage will help to make up for the gun's dopey fire rate, putting it more in line with the other SMGs in the class. Though despite having a decent damage output, it's best not to forget that the grease gun is still a close quarter combat weapon at the end of the day, with it still taking quite a lot of shots to kill over distance. It can be beaten by a few of the other submachine guns over longer ranges that have a faster time to kill, plus it'll be beaten by most of the other guns from the other classes too. So it's best not to get into a false sense of security just because the gun's bullets are a little bit deadlier than average, as they're still not going to compete with most of the other weapons in the game outside of CQC. The grease gun's recoil pattern is another factor to solidify this fact, because it can be pretty erratic, and it'll often force shots off target, which, combined with a slow fire rate, can increase those kill times by a hell of a lot. Not good. So in a way, it should still be treated like an aggressive SMG, where it'll be more effective to get closer to your targets before opening fire. With the M3 having some fairly good reload speeds, and with it being able to handle its ammo quite well, having the combination of a manageable fire rate, decent mag size, and the ability to kill in less shots, this allows it to handle quite well in risky situations behind enemy lines, where having enough ammo to get the job done is going to be more important, making it a perfect weapon for sneaking up on the enemy and flanking their position. It can generally be a bit punishing if you miss too many shots, with it drastically slowing kill times, but providing you play to the gun's strengths, using offensive tactics, the grease gun can be a very deadly SMG that goes particularly well with stealthy playstyles when rushing the objective. So that's all I've got for you this time guys, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give me a thumbs up to show me you did, and subscribe and apply notifications to be the first to see new content coming very soon. Take it easy, and I'll be seeing you in that next episode.